What does psychological expression actually mean in this specific context?
Okay, so usually in a movie about a performance, think of a standard biopic about a singer. You see the audience, you see the stage, you see the backstage area. You are watching the performance from the outside.
Right, you're a spectator.
Exactly. But in the 17-minute sequence, the film jumps inside Victoria's head. We stop seeing the reality of the theater, and we start seeing the subjective reality of the dancer herself.
So the things we see on screen aren't literally happening on the stage.
Right, they couldn't be. There are moments where the scenery changes instantly, which is physically impossible on a real stage. At one point, she's dancing with a partner who literally turns into a piece of newspaper floating in the wind, and then turns into the shoemaker, and then turns into her lover Julian, and then turns into Lermontov.
It's pure surrealism.
It is. The concept of music as emotional architecture that's mentioned in the essays is really key here. The music dictates the reality. When the music gets scary, the visual world gets scary, the audience completely disappears, the stage becomes a vast desert or a lonely city street.
I remember reading about the expressionistic lighting in this part. It really reminds me of those old German horror movies.
Oh yeah, it has major Cabinet of Dr. Caligari vibes for sure. The shadows are incredibly long and sharp. It's meant to show us that for the obsessive artist, the internal world is more real and often more terrifying than the external world.
There's that specific moment where the shoemaker, the figure in the ballet who tempts her with the shoes, he looks genuinely demonic.
That is the key image of the whole sequence.
Yeah.
The shoemaker represents the temptation of art itself. He offers the shoes. He smiles this incredibly creepy smile. And in the ballet, she creates him, she dances with him, and eventually she is destroyed by him.
Wow.
It's the entire plot of the movie summarized in a single dance taking place inside her mind.
It sounds like a fever dream.
It really is. And it solves a major cinematic problem.
Right?
How do you show obsession? You can't just have an actor stand there and say, I am obsessed. You have to show the world warping around them.
Right, show don't tell.
Exactly. That's what this sequence does. It shows the psychological cost of perfectionism by visually trapping us in her nightmare. As a viewer, you feel the exhaustion. You feel the depth confusion she's experiencing.
I want to zoom out a bit, though. We've been talking a lot about the psychology of the characters and the visual style. But the sources bring up a really interesting point about the historical context. Because this is 1948. Great Britain, World War II just ended 3 years prior.
This is a crucial layer. You really cannot fully understand this film without remembering the war. The British Film Institute analysis leans heavily on this. 1948 Britain was not a happy, colorful place. It was gray, it was bombed out, there was strict rationing still in place, food, clothes, petrol, everything is incredibly austere.
And then this movie just drops into theaters.
And it is an absolute explosion of luxury. We go to Monte Carlo, we go to Paris, we have that blinding Technicolor red, we have satin and velvet everywhere. It was the ultimate escapism for a really weary population.
So was it just eye candy for a depressed nation? Just a distraction?
Well, yes and no. It was certainly eye candy, but there's a much darker current running through it that the notes mention. This idea of sacrifice as artistic mythology. Think about the mindset. The UK had just spent 6 years sacrificing everything, lives, money, their youth, for a massive cause, for the war effort.
Right, the noble sacrifice. Everyone had to give up something for the greater good.
Exactly. Now the war is over. But that deep psychology of sacrifice is still sitting there in the culture.
Right.
This film basically takes that noble urge to die for a cause and transfers it over to art. It asks the audience, is it noble to die for beauty?
That is a really heavy parallel. It's almost like the film is processing the collective trauma of the war through the lens of a ballet company.
Precisely. It validates the idea that suffering for something greater than yourself is the highest possible calling. Whether that something is defeating fascism or performing a flawless pirouette, the underlying structure of the sacrifice feels the same.
That makes a lot of sense.
And the ballet culture of the mid-20th century was the perfect vehicle for this metaphor because it is inherently militaristic. It is fiercely disciplined. You bleed, you break your toes, you starve yourself, all for the final performance.
It's the soldier and the ballerina. Same intense discipline, just a different battlefield.
And in that reading, Lermontov is the general. He demands that the troops hold the line at all costs. He demands absolute, unquestioning loyalty. In a post-war context, his character actually makes perfect sense. He is a wartime commander in peacetime.
So we have the trap of the red shoes. We have the brutal binary choice between love and art. We have the surreal nightmare of the internal mind. And it all drives toward the ending. Now, we aren't going to spoil the exact plot beats of the finale for anyone listening who hasn't seen it yet.
No spoilers here. The plot is really worth seeing unfold for yourself. But we do have to talk about the feeling of the ending, because it absolutely does not offer a clean resolution.
Right, that's the no resolution theme from our notes. The movie simply doesn't tell us who was right.
It refuses to, and I think that is what haunts people. If the movie ended with her quitting the dance, having a baby, and just being perfectly happy, it would be a simple moral lesson. Family is more important than career.
Right.
And if it ended with her dumping the guy and becoming the greatest dancer in history with absolutely no regrets, the lesson would be that art is worth any price.
But it does neither of those things.
It does neither. It just shows the collision. It shows the brutal car crash of these two massive opposing forces, the force of ordinary human life and the transcendent force of art. And it just leaves the wreckage right there on the stage for us to look at. It forces the viewer to ask the question themselves, was it worth it?
The sources mention that the film leaves you with a lingering sense of awe and melancholy.
Awe and melancholy is the perfect way to describe it. It's that very specific feeling of looking at something incredibly beautiful that is also currently on fire.
Yeah.
You can't look away from it, but you know it is actively being destroyed right in front of your eyes.
Which really brings us back to us, the listeners today. Why does this ballet movie from 1948 still hit so hard right now? I think it's because we all kind of have our own version of the Red Shoes.
We really do. We live in a modern culture that fetishizes the grind just as much as Lermontov ever did. We look at the tech entrepreneur who proudly sleeps under his desk, or the brilliant musician who burns out and overdoses, and we have this weird, complicated mix of pity and outright worship.
We love the art they produce, but we completely ignore the destruction of the artist. Or maybe we don't ignore it. Maybe we actually expect it.
Or even worse, we think the destruction is a necessary ingredient for the art. We fully buy into the myth. We sit there and think, well, if I'm not suffering, I must not be working hard enough.
Right.
That is the red shoes talking. That is the voice of the shoes whispering to you, dance faster.
That's the real psychological cost.
Yeah.
The shoes are incredibly seductive. They promise you greatness. They promise you legacy. But they never promise you happiness.
And that is the provocative thought we really want to leave you with today. It's so easy to watch a movie like this and just judge the characters from afar. It's easy to say Lermontov is a bad person or Victoria should have just quit and gone home. But look at your own life.
What are the things you feel compelled to do? The things that define your identity so completely that you honestly don't know who you are without them.
It could be your career. It could be a creative project you're obsessed with. It could even be an image or a persona you're maintaining on social media. It's anything that demands you give up a little piece of your humanity just to keep it going.
So as you go about your week, ask yourself, what are the red shoes in your life? What is the thing that makes you dance until you drop?
And the follow-up question, the really scary one, if you ever wanted to stop, could you actually take them off?
That's something to think about. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us. Keep watching out there.
See you next time.